video. In this video, I'm gonna talk you through the Terraform documentation and authenticate Terraform with AWS. Right. So first thing first, when you launch any resource in AWS, you need to ask these three questions in your mind. The first one is how to authenticate to AWS, and the next one is in which AWS reason the resource need to be created. Okay, and the third one is which resource are you trying to launch. For example, it can be an easy to instance S3 bucket, I'm user, anything, right? So you just should be knowing question to these answer to this question first. Let us go one by one. So how to authenticate to AWS? Usually when you manually try and log into AWS, so go to browser and search for AWS console login. We will just click on sign in. So either you can log in as I'm user or root user. You will provide your email address, your password, and then we'll go log into your AWS console, right? So this is how your management console look like this, and this is what you have, right? So usually you don't this way when you do it manually, but when you are working with Terraform you can't access this console, right? You can't access this management console, then you will log in there. So in different ways of logging to authenticate. So for this we are searching for terraform .io for the documentation. Okay, so under Terraform documentation you have something called registry. You can go there, and here if you remember in the first video I told you that we have multiple providers that are supported by Terraform supports variety of providers. Right under that the AWS is among them. So if you want to just look at what are the different providers that are Terraform supports you, you can just click on browse provider. Here if you see we have AWS, Azure, Oracle, Alibaba Cloud Infrastructure. These are many providers, right? And the list goes on. If you see here, we have a minimum 2604 providers, right? So there are different things available in the Terraform. You need to pick whichever you need working on. We will talk about these things later. So we have an official partner and community. So we are different badges by using which you can recognize which is official, which is partner one, which is community build provider. All those things we will talk about in a separate video. Okay, so let's try to understand only how to pick the provider, right? So here if you see, this is officially provided by develop HashiCorp itself, so we are safe to use it. And this is very important that HashiCorp keeps updating any providers that they support. For example, if you see here, download in a week, we have millions, and download in a month also this, and download this year is crossed 620.7 million downloads, right? And over all the times we have reached around some billions user we have download AWS. By this you understand how vastly AWS is growing with Terraform, right? So AWS is growing with Terraform. This is what in the documentation. But how to search authenticate with AWS, right? For that we have to just select documentation here. Okay, so here it will provide different things AWS provider, and you will give you an overview of what it is and how to use it, right? So if you see here, you will have a no brief documentation on what is doing going to do. And the beauty of this Terraform documentation is that it will also provide you an example here itself. So how can make use of this block, right? So previously we are not having this Terraform block. They have introduced it u 1.3 0.13 Terraform version. So here it is, configure the AWS provider, in which we have to select our reason. Yeah, so we will talk about this more. But important thing is, if you see here, we have commented configuration, the AWS provider. You need to add this block in order to create your resource, in order to authenticate with AWS, right? So if you are missing you in the earlier version to 0 to 0.0, you just add provider block. You don't need to add Terraform, and even in 0.13. Even if you do not provide this Terraform block, it will work. So now you might ask, what is Terraform block, right? So don't worry about Terraform block. What is provider block handle in a Terraform block will contain Terraform related information. What version of Terraform, what version of AWS you want to specify that. Okay. Provided and provider block for this bracket to this bracket braces, right? So this is one block, so this is under the whatever we have, right? We will call that as parameters. Okay, so if you see here, these are the different services that we have supports Terraform, right? These are AWS related services. We have config, we have like code commit, etc, etc. So AWS using this particular documentation, so you can now go ahead and build on it, right? So in this way, we have region to be mentioned, because while creating any resource we select the region here in the console, right? Usually by default it will be North Virginia, but if you want any another region, you will go ahead and select it. This is what we mention in the documentation also. Okay. Also, first, how to do authenticate is answer. Now the next, in which region you want to deploy the resource, right? So that this is what you want to mention in the provider block also. You don't need to remember the syntax completely, but I will tell you the tip to remember it. Okay. So this is about authentication, right? A provider block, sorry, we will go to authentication now. There are many different ways to authenticate with your AWS, right? So one with the parameters in the provider configuration, one by using environment variable, one by using shared credentials and container credentials, instant profile. We have these many options that use, right? So one thing that you can do is uh, you can go with this provider block. You can specify a region where we'll specify an access and secret key. What is secret key and access key, we will discussing in the previous video, right? So this method has got one by one problem. The problem is you specify access key here, right? So whatever access key and secret key that we get from the AWS console, if you specify here, if you upload this code to GitHub repo, let's say you are an organization with 2 or 3 people working on the same code, so you will it to GitHub repo. So what we have done, right? So the best possible way to go with this, having a profile for your own Terraform, that we done in the particular video, go ahead and watch. And we have done now, you authenticate, we will use a profile that we can create it, right? The first question in answer now, how do you authenticate? One is by using access and secret key others. One is going with the profile option, uh, the resource you want to create. We need to provide here in the provider block only, right? If you see here the provider block, we will specify which region we want to use, is also mentioned here in the next question. uh, Whenever you are trying to launch, whether it can be in EC2, whatever you can be in any S3, all those things you have right here. If you go ahead and search for EC2, you will get what are the different things that you do in the EC2 right here. If you see, we have EC2 Elastic Compute, we have AWS, AMIs, EC2 Fleet, EC2 Host, EC2 EIP, Elastic IP instance are. If you want to launch any instance, you go to your AWS instance. So yeah, that's how which resource are you trying to launch. So the next is we have to try to authenticate with AWS using Terraform script. Okay, so what I have done, I have all created one of the folder in my laptop and name as assignment. So under that I have created one more file, uh, which name is provider.tf. So file should end with the .tf extension, so that is standard. If you know download and install Terraform, your no editor will automatically recognize it, and it will add the HashiCorp Terraform logo in front of the tf file that you created. You need, and then that file will .tf. Okay, so this is the important thing. Okay, I hope you are clear one of these, and let's just go ahead and create a provider block in our script. Okay, so just create a provider block, and you could just type provider, it will automatically help you here. So I just write the script earlier, so I'll show this one. Yeah, so in this you have to just this is the time. If you have to just verify you are working correctly, if this is provider block is working fine or not. What you need is to be, you have to just in the folder you have to script. In my case, I inside of assign folder, and you have to just type Terraform in it. This is the first command that you know, learning Terraform in it. Basically it will do if you are mentioning provider as AWS, right? So Terraform is a declarative language. It will not go ahead and install all the things provisionally. Basically it initializes successfully, so it will download all your plugins whatever you have mentioned. So if you are using AWS, it will go ahead and install AWS plugin. So if you using Azure plugin, it will go ahead and install Azure for you. Yeah, it will go ahead and install all your that you plugin. It will not keep it download always whatever. So what is the use of init script Terraform? Init, basically it initialize, right? If you see here, you get a response like it has been initialized, right? So if get the confirmation, you can just clear the screen as your. So this is how we successfully authenticate with your AWS provider. If you see here, this has created two different directories for us. If you see, just open. So